Thank you. A quorum being present of 75 voters, we'll begin our town meeting at 7 o'clock. Please come to order. As is our tradition, let's first stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to our May 8th, May what? I got the wrong day, right? 6th, thank you. 2019 town meeting, annual town meeting. The warrant having been posted by our bylaws, we can commence with our annual town meeting. I'm going to introduce everyone in front here. I'm Doug Story, your town moderator. To my right is our town clerk, Pam Powell. Below and seated in front are the Board of Selectmen, Jonathan Keep, Bob Sikansky, Stan Wysocki, our town administrator, Don Lowe, and our town council, Robert Gibbons of Miracle Connell. Below and to my left is our advisory committee, Brian Boyle, Connie Benjamin, Joe Myerson, Ted Kirshner, and Ann Hurd. I also want to make one additional acknowledgement tonight. After 31 years of dedicated service, we have an employee who's retiring this year. This will be her last town meeting. Linda Day has worked for the town as a very dedicated employee. Anyone who's had any involvement with Town Hall knows her. Anyone who's been on a board, who's been on the Board of Selectmen, and we really appreciate all those years of the service. Thank you, Linda. I don't know what we'll do without you. Meeting procedures. I just want to address a few procedures before we get started. We use town meeting time and Mass General Law and our own bylaws and traditions to guide our procedures. Our quorum is 75. We've reached that. Once a quorum is declared, we assume that it exists unless it's doubted. All decisions will be yay or nay. Thank you, Mrs. Troop. The main motion before us is the wording on the article, unless there has been a revision made that has been accepted as within the scope of the original article motion. We allow a voice vote in most cases, and we also allow it in a 2/3 majority vote. The moderator's decision needs not be verified unless it's appealed and 7 or more voters stand up, then we will do a hand count. We try to limit our presentations tonight. I think we only have 2 large presentations, and we limit those to 5 to 10 minutes. Anyone can speak at town meeting who's a registered voter. We ask you to come up to one of the 2 microphones, doesn't matter which one. Stand in line, and when I recognize you, you can speak. We'd like you to keep it to 2 minutes or less. Keeps things moving along. And we like to let everyone speak before anyone speaks a second time. Obviously, we want you to only speak when I've recognized you and address your questions or comments to me, the moderator. We want to keep comments focused on the issue that's before us and not stray from that. If anyone does want to raise a point of order, you can just raise your hand and call out point of order, and then I will recognize you. As a courtesy to everyone in the room, let's all make sure our cell phones are muted or any other devices. Thank you. And following our general practice, all households should have received a warrant in the mail. So I will not read the entirety of each article. I'll refer to them by number and a brief description. If there have been any changes made, I'll make note of those as well. With that, let's commence to Article 1. Unless there are any questions. Are there any questions on procedures? Okay. Article 1 is to accept the annual reports. The sponsor is the Board of Selectmen. Recommended 3-0 by the Board of Selectmen. Approved 6-0 by the Advisory Committee. Vote required is a majority. What is your favor on the question, the article? Is there a second? Second. Is there any debate on Article 1? All those in favor of Article 1? Oh.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator.
Sure.
I just have a question. Martha Remington, Main Street. Are the annual reports only online now, or will we eventually be getting a copy of the annual reports? Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Moderator, the annual reports are available at Town Hall. We do not mail them to every resident. We never have, but they are available, hard copy at the Town Hall.
Okay. Any other questions on the annual reports? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the annual reports, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes by unanimously. Article 2, unpaid bills for fiscal year 2018. I'm not going to read this, but it's to see if we will vote to transfer from available funds a total of $2,707.96 for FY18 bills. Sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, approved by both the Board of Selectmen Advisory unanimously. This requires a 4/5 vote, so we would need to be unanimous. Is there any discussion? Thank you. Second? Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of Article 2, unpaid bills for fiscal year 18, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Article 3, fiscal year 2020 operating budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds or otherwise provide the sum of $24,905,915.39. I'm not going to read any more. This is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, recommended unanimously by both the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory, requires a majority vote. What is the pleasure on the article? Motion's been moved and seconded. We are now going to have a presentation by Advisory on the operating budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to try to buzz through these slides pretty quickly because we used a format similar to the format of last year. But before I get started, I just want to say thank you to several folks in Town Hall, including Don Lowe, Linda Day, sad. We're going to miss you. Kristen Noel and Nanachka Rogers, also Capital Planning, Board of Selectmen, and all the department heads and boards and committees for helping us get through what you will see was a pretty challenging budget season. Next slide. So the FY 2020 operating budget, as Doug just read, was $24.9 million. This is an increase of 5.87% over last year. Next slide. This shows the total budgeted expenditures, which includes the operating budget from the last slide, plus all of the capital items, which are coming up later in the warrant, so we'll kind of discuss those later. But the overall increase, including those, is 5.11%. Next slide. This is just a brief snapshot of our sources of revenue. These sources of revenue are largely the same as what we had last year, and what I really just wanted to quickly call out is that, as always, we rely heavily on property taxes as our source of revenue. Our main source of revenue accounts for almost 88% of all of our revenue. By contrast, if you look down at state aid, that's 1% of our revenue. And then local receipts, which includes things like excise taxes, meals tax, room occupancy tax, that's 5.7% of our revenue, and then a few other assorted things. The next slide just kind of visually depicts a lot of the information from the previous slide, and again, you'll see residential taxes are almost 86% of our revenue. Commercial, industrial, and personal property taxes are 6.45% of our revenue. So again, even within taxation, we're heavily weighted onto residential property tax. Next slide, please. This is just a quick overview of our total expenditures by big categories. You'll see education is over 63% of our operating expenditure budget. Town salary and wages is next at almost 14%. Town department other operating expenses, so that's things like office supplies, building costs, those are 9.4%. And then insurance, benefits, and retirement, 5.5%. And you'll see in one of the later slides, we had some pretty significant increases in that specific category. Debt service is 5.2%, and then for this year, our other capital appropriations are about 2.6%. Next slide. That's just a visual depiction of the slide you just saw, and you'll see those pie slices remain pretty consistent in terms of their relative size. So, you know, education is usually around that 64-65% of the operating budget. Public safety and public works, general government, those pie slices have remained relatively consistent over the past several years. Next slide. These show the changes from FY19 to FY20. So you'll see our education budget went up almost 6.3%. Just as a reminder to everybody, that's both in the Neshoba Regional School District and Minuteman. This year, our Minuteman assessment increased almost 8%, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have undertaken a gigantic building project, so the capital costs are folded up into our assessment. Public safety is up 4.62%. Part of that increase is attributable to the fact that for the first time ever, Bolton has a full-year, full-time fire chief. Public works is up 5.5%. And one of the things that you might notice if you went through the warrant is that we've had a really significant increase in our transfer station costs. We have almost $40,000 in increased recycling, hauling, and processing costs, and that's something that every municipality in the Commonwealth is facing due to a changed policy by China in what it accepts in recycling. Other government is up 7.63%. Benefits and insurance, which I had kind of mentioned before, up almost 11, actually over 11%. And then our debt service is down this year, partially because we were able to successfully refinance a good chunk of our debt. Next slide, please. I'm not going to linger on this slide. These are just all the capital items that are reflected in later warrant articles. Next slide, please. Kind of covered some of the significant factors already. But I did want to note that based on the initial spending requests back in January, we had a deficit of almost $500,000. So kind of like we did last year, we really had to revisit every single request from every department. We deferred and reduced some spending, but even after going through that exercise of cutting, we are still having to use $287,000 of free cash. And we'll talk a bit more about the free cash in a slide or two. Next slide, please. I mentioned the full-time fire chief. So one thing to note on the next bullet about employee and retiree benefit costs, that also includes our OPEB, other post-employment benefit assessment. So that's basically paying for the medical insurances of retirees. And we as a town have made a really good commitment to fully fund our OPEB assessment. The problem is that when your assessment goes up like $40,000 in 1 year, which is actuarially determined, it's not something that we as a town have any control over, we've made the commitment to do it. So we have to use free cash to pay our OPEB assessment this year. Nearly all of our capital items will be paid for with free cash or other available funds, and the only borrowing we're doing is a partial borrowing for Article 18. Next slide. We showed you our financial policy targets last year for the first time. Last year, we were meeting all of our targets related to use of free cash, maintenance of reserves, maintaining debt service payments within 5 to 7% of general fund revenues, and funding 100% of our OPEB required contribution. This year, we're hitting all of our targets except the second one up there, which is to maintain a free cash balance of at least $350,000 heading into the next fiscal year. Last year, we did hit that target. This year, we're short by over $200,000 because we're using so much free cash to balance the operating budget. Next slide. And that just quickly shows you the comparison between last year to this year. Last year, we ended up with $353,000. This year, we're ending up with $134,000 of free cash. So that's something we need to keep an eye on. Next slide, please. There's one new revenue possibility in this year's warrant, which is Article 14. Bolton already has a local option rooms tax, which is set at 2% currently. If the Article 14 gets accepted, then the town could increase the excise tax to 6%, which, as you would probably assume, falls almost entirely on non-Bolton residents because it's people that are staying here from out of town. Next slide, please. This is the FY 2020 estimated tax rate. This is an estimate that I got from the Board of Assessors, but as you know, the actual final tax rate isn't set until December of 2019. The average property value is up $10,000. The tax rate is going to increase, they estimate, 3%, and the average single-family tax bill will increase $536.90. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, we rely heavily on residential property taxes, which is going to be difficult to sustain over the long term. So we need to continue conversations about how we diversify our revenue sources. Actually, if we can just switch to the next slide, you'll see that over time, this goes back to 2010, and you'll see that our commercial, industrial, and personal property tax has been relatively flat, and the residential taxes have increased. Next slide. So actually, the next two slides visually illustrate another challenge that many towns have, which is that the education component of the budget becomes a bigger slice of the pie over time. So the snapshot on the left is 2003, where education was 57.5% of our overall operating budget. In 2018, it was 63.5%. And the next slide just shows how, as we've gone over time, the ability for the non-education component of the budget to experience any growth has been pretty constrained by the fact that we have to make sure we're also fulfilling our obligations to the school system. So next slide. That's pretty much where I want to end it. We can, of course, answer questions as we go along, and as always, we welcome any input. So thank you very much.
Okay, next, we're going to have the presentation for the Neshoba Regional School District by Superintendent Brooke Clinchy.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to talk through quickly our component of the budget as well. I also want to start by thanking our Board of Selectmen, our FinCom, and of course our school committee for their tireless efforts, particularly our chairman, Chairman Ramosko, for your support and your constant encouragement as we've worked through this process. I will go through this quickly, and then of course I'd be happy to entertain questions. The first slide really, and I won't speak to every single slide in terms of everything that's on there. The thing to note here is in the middle column where the F20 voted budget is $55,733,801. The percentage change for the district is 2.99%, so just under 3%. The pie down below, you can see that our salaries and benefits for the school district is generally like this throughout the Commonwealth at around 80. Ours is about 82%. Next slide. Just a couple of things to note here on this particular slide. Of course, at the top, there is the budget. Again, the total budget of the $55 million. Down below Bolton, you can see in the middle of the page, there is the 5-year rolling assessment, fixed assessment, et cetera, all the way over. The percentage increase was identical to last year's percentage increase at 4.87%. Down below, if I can just point out the E&D component, we've been on a bit of a hamster wheel for our E&D over the last many years, and we're trying very hard to get off of that. In essence, what we've been doing is borrowing from our E&D on a yearly basis. Very often it's been over $1 million. As you all know, several years ago, about 3 years ago, we had a forensic audit done on our books, and at that point in time, it was encouraged that we need to get off of that wheel and stop borrowing so heavily and relying so heavily on the E&D fund. So if you take a look, you can see at FY17, it was $1 million, FY18, $1 million as well, FY19, 0.8. FY20 0.75, and so our goal for the next couple of years is to be able to bring that down to about the $200,000 to $300,000 range. If we can even bring it down more, we would really appreciate being able to do that. To the next slide, thank you. Just a couple of key impacts for us to point out. The district-wide salaries increase is 5.01, but that does not mean that that was the average percentage. The percent actually for our teachers, for example, was at that 2% mark. The 5% is because we added a couple positions that have been previously paid for by grants. That grant has gone away, and I'll speak to that in a minute, particularly for 2 nurses, so those salaries are now in there as well. The employee insurance benefits, we were just in the opposite position as Bolton in general was this year. We actually, our numbers went down substantially. So that's why you can see a decrease for us this year in the school district for our insurance and benefits of 6.27%. Special education also saw a decrease this year, which is rare, but that happened for us this year. We had a number of out-of-district placement students return back into the district, and so when you're not paying for that out-of-district placement nor the transportation, it tends to add up quickly. In part, we were able to start several programs throughout the district, and that, of course, was a drawing card for some of our children to come back into the district. So there was a decrease in that budget line of 14%. The transportation was up marginally at 1.4%, and grants and revolving funds, we continue to maximize every grant we can possibly get. In fact, at our next school committee meeting, we'll be announcing that we've just received 2 additional grants that we hadn't counted on this year that we've just made application for and received. Grants and revolving funds is up 1.97%, so that's really good news for us. Next, thank you. Some changes and initiatives, some of the key just proposed staffing changes to the left. You can see the high school, actually. We bumped up a couple of positions in the high school this year that were partial positions, and we've bumped them up to FTEs, full FTEs, and that's just because the sheer number of students warranted the increase in those particular positions. The school nurses down below, you can see where it says 0.5 school nurse and a 0.5. One is a high school, one is resource nurse. Those were the 2 positions that I referred to earlier that were previously paid for by grant money. And this year that grant has gone away, and so we've had to take those into our regular allocation. Up to the right, initiatives that we focused on this year. The Chromebook rollout was very, very smooth this year, grades 6 to 12, and we have carts for our younger children, carts with Chromebooks on that move from classroom to classroom. We also had a real focus this year on digital learning at the middle school level, and we were looking to expand that down to the elementary and up to the high school, and it worked very, very well. We are very pleased with the results of that. We continued on with our early literacy initiative, year 4 of 5 years, and that's really at that lower elementary end. STEM, there's ongoing implementation of relatively new standards and frameworks from the DESE. That's going very well. Social studies review has just been completed at the DESE level, and then that now comes down at our level, and so we're just starting a process, and you'll see us put some effort into that over the course of the next 2 years or so. The school committee took it upon themselves to authorize me to resubmit this year for an SOI, a statement of interest, with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to have a look at this particular building. So we did not get queued up last year, so they took a vote and we have done a resubmission. We won't know until this upcoming December whether we've been queued up. We may or may not be. If we are not, then the school committee will decide again next year whether to resubmit or not. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that. Social emotional learning initiatives, you're going to see more of that play out over the course of the next 2 years in our district as we create our district improvement plan. Dr. McGuire, our assistant superintendent, leads those efforts, and you'll see that coming through our pipeline for the next 2 years. Offsets and efficiencies, we are always looking district-wide at ways that we can achieve efficiencies with our staff, and that continues. That doesn't stop. That is ongoing. You heard Brian speak earlier about OPEB. We too are taking our OPEB liability and responsibility very seriously. And this last year, we had a trust fund set up, and we are now continuing to fund that particular line. Full-day kindergarten, we are making a movement forward in that area. I'm sure that you've heard that. We don't know when we will be able to start. It's going to depend on when we basically achieve a certain level of funding where we can pay for the first year of that program, because you don't get any money from the state in that first year, and there's no tuition that comes in that first year. So the district must bear the responsibility for that first year, and it's about $500,000 to $600,000. So that's one of the reasons why you'll see us ask for the stabilization fund at the end of tonight. We continue to resource grants effectively. We've actually taken a look at all of our grants, and we've parsed things out differently to be more effective with that. Facilities is ongoing for us. We've got proactive maintenance plans for all of our buildings now, proactive inspection plans, and so that's on course and doing extremely well. Health insurance review, we did a full-scale health insurance review this year. We set up a very large committee that had a number of different representatives on it. We did an RFP. We didn't have a lot of interest in funding that, but we had, I think, four committees. I think, Kevin, you were on that. I think there were 4 that put in, and then that committee did its work and has done a full-scale review in that area. Next slide, thank you. The FY20 district areas of focus, the technology, of course, will continue on. The district-wide social emotional learning initiatives, our focus is going to be on the teachers' work for the first year and on the students for the second year. And as I say, you'll see that come out with our new district improvement plan. There's the facility needs for this particular building, the proposed stabilization fund. Safety and security measures are ongoing. We had a full comprehensive review done of the entire district for safety and security, and then we have started to pick away out those recommendations, and in our communities tonight, part of that is on some of the capital plans, but we've got a blueprint of how that will play itself out. Communication plan, we implemented one this year, and for those of you who monitor, for example, our website, you'll see that it's seen an absolutely wonderful facelift. District improvement plans and school improvement plans. If you're listening at all to our school committee meetings, you'll see that those are all starting to tie together so that we are all rowing the same direction down the river between our district improvement plans and our school improvement plans. They are all tied in. And the facility compliance, as I spoke about earlier. The next slide. This is just a final slide. On the right-hand side, you can see that's the state average cost per pupil. On the left side is our Neshoba cost per pupil, and that's just FYI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Clenchey. We're going to go through the budget, which is found on page 23 of your warrant. If everyone can turn to that, because we do not have that on slides. And as is our custom, I'm just going to read each section and the total, and then we'll stop when we get to the end of a department and take any questions on that part of the budget. So our FY 2020 budget. General government, town moderator, $50. Total selectmen, $19,620. Town administrator, $278,922. Advisory committee, $180. Reserve Fund, 100,000. Town Accountant, 89,503. Board of Assessors, 150,725. Treasurer, 173,718. Human Resources, 20,084. Legal Services, 50,000. MIS, 58,291. Town Clerk, 105,371. Elections, 11,120. Street Listing and Registrars, 2,355. Conservation Commission, 80,110. Planning Board, 64,265. Appeals Board, 200. Agricultural Commission, 1,746. Economic Development, 1,000. Town Buildings, 143,942. Town Hall, 29,135. Building Insurance, 55,960. Town Reports, 3,700. Total General Government, 1,439,997. And I'll stop there with for any questions on that whole section.
Don Cole on Main Street. Can you explain the compensation reserve as part of the town administrator, the 60,000 that's new this year?
Okay, the question was, is there an explanation for number 5190, compensation reserve? Is that correct?
That's correct.
For 60,000 on page 23. Do we have, Don?
That's a new line item that we have for this year. It's to, once union negotiations are settled, that's a line item that's already pre-approved to be able to once the Board of Selectmen have approved final negotiations, to be able to authorize payment rather than have the unions wait until the next town meeting to appropriate the sum.
Okay, so that'll end up in one of the other departments, probably.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on general government? Okay, the next section is public safety. Public safety building, 199,587. Police department, 1,341,643. Fire department, 316,276. Ambulance, 193,206. Building inspector, 33,452. Plumbing and gas inspector, 18,105. Wiring inspector, 20,988. Emergency management, 3,900. Animal control officer, 20,724. Traffic lights, 1,500. Tree warden, 52,042. Communications, 189,076, for a total for public safety of 2,390,499. We'll stop for questions on public safety.
Ken Troop from Meadow Road. This is on ambulance 231, and it's not a question, but buried in line item 5113 is payment for the cadet EMT program. And I learned this afternoon that tomorrow night the program is being honored by District 2 of the State Emergency Medical Services with a special recognition award. So our money is being well spent in that line item.
Thank you, Ken.
Randall Porteous, 5 Sugar Road. I had a question on the communications. It seems like that's gone up 11%. That seems rather high.
Which item is that?
The total communications, 299. Yeah, the dispatchers.
Total communications.
So that is for our regional dispatch system in Devens. You're absolutely right that it was a significant increase. It was also a pretty significant increase last year. And what's happening there is that they're reaching capacity in terms of the member towns that can go into Devens. We think that they're kind of fully staffed up now. I know that our town administrator serves on the board there and our town accountant serves on the finance committee there. We're not expecting as significant an increase next year, but if they have any additional details they want to add.
Any other questions on public safety? Okay, the next item is education. As you saw in the presentation, the Neshoba Regional School District, $15,570,994. Minuteman Regional VOTEC, $630,937. And post-secondary Voc Ed, $16,464, for a total of $16,218,395. Are there questions on education? Seeing none, Public Works. Highway, $811,179. Construction and Maintenance, $211,100. Snow and Ice, $180,000. Street Lighting, $7,950. Transfer Station, $206,535. Landfill, $6,100. Sewer, $8,700. The next line is 450 water, I believe, $5,000. Cemetery, $8,000. Total Public Works, $1,444,564. Are there any questions on Public Works?
Gentry Farrell, Wattaquatic Hill Road.
Please speak into the mic.
Okay, Gentry Farrell, Wattaquatic Hill Road. I just was, and this may not be the right place, so I got the impression then that if there were, for example, a town-wide campaign that reduced the amount of, like, for plastics in particular that we were bringing to the transfer station, that it's possible that that would be reducing costs both in terms of landfill and in terms of what we pay for dealing with recycling. Is that possible?
Is that the question is,
Yeah, that's the question,
would
like,
a
is it-
reduction
is
in the
it-
plastic being brought to the
Right, if-
landfill reduce what we are being
Right, in
paid?
this, yeah,
Or we have to pay to get rid of it.
right.
Thank you. Anyone?
Wants to add anything, but my understanding is that actually any efforts that any resident makes on the front end to improve the quality of the recycling that they do does improve the efficiency of the recycling processing, whether by our transfer station or the next place that we send it. I don't know whether that comes back to Bolton or whether it's like it would first show up on the budgets of the intermediary that we pay for, but I don't know if Joe Lynch wants to add anything.
Thanks, Brian. Is there another question over here?
I'd like to be brief on.
Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry, DPW, I didn't see
sorry.
you.
Want to ask the other
Go right
question?
ahead.
All right. To answer the last question, to be very brief on a very complicated subject, we have a global situation that really is affecting the entire markets across the entire world, particularly the United States. And it's because of a trend that the entire economic system has gotten into of single stream recycling. It's a balance of a very labor intensive effort versus profitability of a recycled commodity. Bolton is committed, has been, and should continue to be committed to separate as best we can and be as clean as we can with the items that we do, in the full hopes that the rest of the country comes along and measures up to our standards. In the meantime, you know, we're suffering the brunt of an economic situation worldwide. But when the situation turns around with the cleanliness of our product, we're poised to reap better benefits, you know, when the day does arrive, hopefully.
Thank you.
Sarah Marks on Still River Road.
Please speak into the mic so we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Getting over a cold, too. I just had a question on the snow and ice removal. I noticed that there's over 100% of markup of overtime over wages. And I was just, I mean, not that I want to cut into anybody's OT, but I was just wondering if there's a way to move or change or modify the job description or job specs so that we can cut down on overtime. I just didn't know if that could just be a cost-saving measure.
I'm really glad you asked that question because you're pointing to a part of the budget that is actually kind of anomalous. So when you look at 423, our snow and ice budget, you'll notice that was $180,000 in FY19, it's $180,000 in FY20, and if you pulled out warrants from like the past 5 years, it's been $180,000 for years. Basically, it doesn't reflect our actual spend at all because the fluctuation is so great. I mean, this year has been a relatively better snow and ice year, but we're allowed to deficit spend in bad years. So the budget decision makers, the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, the DPW department head, and advisory committee had a discussion last year, and we wanted to continue just to budget $180,000, but we know that our actual spend is whatever it's gonna be. So the short answer to your question is wages overtime, that doesn't actually correspond to any actual overtime.
Thank you. Okay. We will move on to Human Services. Board of Health, 51,523. Nursing, 6,036. Council on Aging, 88,807. Veterans Services, 41,899. Health and Human Safety, nothing, zero, I guess. Total Human Services, 188,065. Are there any questions on Health and Human Services? Okay, moving on. Culture and Recreation. Library, 445,516. Recreation, 41,223. Historical Commission, 6,250. Celebration of Memorial Day, 2,800. For a total for cultural and recreation, 495,789. Any questions on culture and recreation? Okay. Debt service, I'll just go right to the bottom line. Total debt service, 1,325,708. Are there any questions on debt service? Employee benefits. WCRS assessment, $472,043. Workers' comp, $31,549. Health insurance, $764,741. Life insurance, $1,400. Medicare, $49,000. For total employee benefits of $1,318,733. Any questions on employee benefits?
Don Cole, Main Street. Do we have any unfunded liabilities regarding retirees or retiree benefits?
So if you look at 911 and 914-5174, 911 is our pension liability, which we have to fully fund.
But that's for current year.
So that
Do we have anything relates to prior years?
no, so 911 relates to current and projected retirees.
Okay,
And then 914-5174, that OPEB, that also relates to current and future retirees. And that's what I mentioned, where we have an actuarial company every year, every 2 years, that takes a look at all of our current retirees and our current staffing to project out the retirees we'll have in the future. And they tell us every year you need to put this into an OPEB trust fund. This year, our actuarially determined contribution went up 23%.
Yep.
So, but we're fully funding it.
okay, and that's great.
Yep.
My concern is I see so many governments, especially municipalities, et cetera, they have these massive unfunded liabilities from the past. Do we have anything like that, or are we completely current? If everybody retired according to the actuarial tables, within reason, we'd cover it all. We don't have any nasty surprises out there?
I mean, if somebody on that side of the room wants to tell me about a nasty surprise, I'd be really sad to hear about it right now. But no, I mean, our game plan, and part of the reason why our bond rating was upgraded this year is because we as a town have made a commitment to get up to snuff on all that stuff, which is different from the vast majority of municipalities in the state.
Yes, definitely.
Bob?
Correct me on this, but my understanding is that, in fact, we do have a deficit projected, and that's the whole purpose of the OPEB payment, is to catch up on that.
Okay,
So there's a plan in place. This was identified 7, 8 years ago.
okay,
We started doing OPEB about 5 years ago, and the actuarial rate that we've been given, am I correct in this? Yep. Allows us to catch up. It's over a long period of time, but we should catch up. Let's see, it should not surprise us.
okay.
Okay, we shouldn't get any surprises
no
if we
$50 million
if we keep paying at the same rate.
Okay. Is there somewhere online I can get more information on this?
Is there someplace, I don't know where the town
your-
OPEB report's available.
We could probably post a PDF of our most recent actuarial report by Milliman. I think it doesn't include, we'd have to see whether it includes any information that can't be public, because it does involve
Yeah,
health
it's
insurance stuff, but I
employee,
think we could post that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, I'm going to do insurance, which is $84,165, and then our total budget is $24,905,915, or $905,915, excuse me. Are there any other questions on the total budget before we vote? Seeing none, this is a simple majority. All those in favor of the fiscal year 2020 operating budget, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Article 4, spending limits of revolving fund accounts. This is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, approved by both the Board of Selectmen Advisory, requires a majority vote. What is your pleasure? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on spending limits of revolving fund accounts? This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Article 5, establishment and spending limit of revolving fund for tax title collection. This is sponsored by the Treasurer Collector and Collector. It is recommended by the Board of Selectmen Advisory and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Article 6, adopt the 12th paragraph of MGL C41, Section 81U. Sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, approved by both the Board of Selectmen and Advisory, and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on this article? Any discussion? Thank you for seconding. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 7, amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 3, Zoning Bylaw, Chapter 250, Zoning Article 5, Special Regulations, Section 250 to 23, Business, Commercial, and Industrial Regulations, to amend subsection G, Design Review Criteria. This is a zoning bylaw, so we have a report from the Planning Board.
Can everyone hear me? Hi. Good evening. I'm Danielle Spicer on the Planning Board. I'm going to read the first part, I think which is up there. At a duly noted Planning Board hearing held on February 13th, 2019, the Planning Board voted unanimously to support and recommend approval of Article 7 of the warrant to amend Section 250-23G of the Business, Commercial, and Industrial Regulations to require additional stormwater requirements for commercial development. In summary, what we're trying to do is this bylaw amendment will provide additional stormwater requirements for commercial developments to be built or expanded in Bolton. Developers will be required to meet the Massachusetts Stormwater Policy as outlined in the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook, as well as use the latest rainfall data from NOAA. In addition, developers will not be able to exceed the stormwater runoff volumes generated from pre-development conditions in order to prevent downstream flooding. The intent of this bylaw amendment is to plan and prepare for climate change. Part of what we're doing here is we realized we had kind of an unwritten policy for when commercial developments came into, we always told them they needed to meet the Mass State stormwater standards, but it wasn't actually spelled out in our regulations. So we're making that very clear in our regulations. The other thing that we are trying to do is be more current in regards to what we're requiring with regard to stormwater regulations. Currently, the Mass stormwater standards only require the rainfall data to be used using technical papers 40, which is rainfall data from about the 1960s. It's definitely outdated. There are other states that have actually jumped on board a little bit ahead of Massachusetts. I'll tell you, Vermont's one of them, Rhode Island's one of them that's already requiring using this NOAA Atlas 14, which is basically rainfall data from 2014. So it's a lot more current data that would be, we're asking our town to follow, basically. And there are other towns, actually, and cities in Massachusetts that have already adopted this regulation. We're just trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve on that one. So with that, I'll just open up to questions.
Are there any questions on Article 7, the amendment to the Code of Bolton, the zoning code? Martha?
Excuse me, Martha Remington, Main Street. Will this new regulation be subject to waivers for individual development, or will they really be cut and dried? They have to be this even if they're more than what the state requires?
So the way it works is we are asking them to meet a more stringent requirement than the state. They are allowed to request a waiver for that. I think the intent of putting this as a bylaw is the Planning Board is serious in enforcing what we're putting forth in our bylaw and requirements. So unless there was an unforeseen condition where you had a site that potentially either one was contaminated or two had a lot of ledge or site constraints that would really prohibit you from meeting the requirements, I think we would look on that on a case-by-case basis. But really the intent is to not provide waivers. It's to enforce these requirements to really prevent downstream flooding, to be more appropriate in the reviewing the designs that are coming in front of the Planning Board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 7. This is a 2/3 majority. It was recommended by both the Board of Selectmen and the advisory. We'll try the voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Thank you, that is unanimous. Okay, Article 8, amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 3, zoning bylaw, Chapter 250 zoning, Article 6, general regulations, Section 250-17, driveways and parking, to amend subsection B, common driveways serving 3 to 5 lots. Again, a presentation, Danielle?
Hear me? Oh, there we go. So this bylaw amendment serves to update the planning board criteria when deciding whether to grant a special permit for a common driveway serving 3 to 5 lots to include environmental impacts on wetlands and water resource areas from the overall project development. The overall project refers to the entire development within the limit of work area. Currently, the bylaw is ambiguous and could be interpreted. I think I lost, oh, there we go. Sorry. Could be interpreted to account for environmental, I'm sorry. The overall project refers to the entire development within the limit of work. The bylaw currently is ambiguous and could be interpreted to account for environmental impacts for the common driveway only. This bylaw amendment serves to further protect Bolton's wetland resource areas as defined in the Bolton's wetlands bylaw. What we're basically trying to do here is there was a lot of gray area in when people came forward with a common driveway permit as to what we were looking for. We're basically stating it out. We are looking at the entire parcel within the limit of work area with regard to impacts. To be consistent with the wetlands bylaw.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought I forgot to read the first part. I'm sorry. Can I back up for a second? Okay. At a duly noticed planning board hearing held on February 13th, 2019, the planning board voted unanimously to support and recommend approval of Article 8 of the warrant for a zoning amendment relative to Section 250-17, driveways and parking to amend subsection B, common driveways serving 3 to 5 lots.
Thank you.
Questions?
Seeing no further questions, we'll vote on Article 8. This is also a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 9. Amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 3, zoning bylaw, to amend 1 building lot per lot for business, limited business, and industrial uses. This is sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by the Selectmen and the Advisory Committee, requires a 2/3 majority, and also requires a Planning Board report. Eric.
Hello, Eric Nealon, member of the Planning Board. At a duly noticed Planning Board hearing held on February 13th, 2019, the Planning Board voted unanimously.
You hold the mic away from your mouth just a little.
The Planning Board voted unanimously to support and recommend approval of Article 9 of the warrant for a zoning amendment relative to Section 250-13.c to amend 1 building per lot for business, limited business, and industrial uses. Basically, right now, we just allow 1 business building per lot. So what you end up with is, 1 giant building, strip mall-like building with multiple retail or whatever is in that lot. What we want to do is be able to split that up based on our review and the special and the public hearing. We want to be able to divide it up to create more of a village feel, be more aesthetically pleasing. You can then push parking to the side or in the back, and that's it.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions on Article 9? Seeing none, we'll vote. This is a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Article 10.
All right, here we go
Amendment.
again.
Let me
Oh,
read
okay.
it first. Amendment to the town's base map and zoning map concerning Main Street and Forbush Mill Road area, the 495 interchange area, and the area along Main Street near the Stowe Line, and the mixed-use overlay district. This has been brought to us by the Planning Board, approved by the Board of Selectmen Advisory, requires a 2/3 vote, and a planning board report. Eric.
Okay, at a duly noticed planning board hearing held on February 13th, 2019, and April 24th, 2019, the planning board voted unanimously to support and recommend approval of Article 10 of the warrant to amend the Bolton, Massachusetts town-based map and zoning map dated September 2016, to amend district boundary lines for business, limited business, and industrial zoning districts, as well as the mixed-use village overlay district to resemble existing parcel boundary lines. So really, this is a cleanup of our business and limited business zones. When the zones were put in, they weren't really in regard to the actual lot lines. So what you end up with is a bunch of split lots. For instance, the gas station on 117 has residential and business going right down the middle of it. So if they wanted to redevelop, they actually couldn't put in a new station because they'd be building on residential land. So it's pre-existing non-conforming. So the attempt of this bylaw is to really clean up all those split lots. And I think I'll go through the different zones where this changes. If you can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah. This is just the overall look of Bolton. You know, this is Office Park area, and there's the Kane property southeast, industrial zone, but we're going to go into more details so you can go to the next slide. All right, this is the industrial zone. This is the old zoning. You could see right here, this is Bolton Woods Way. So actually, in this, you know, taking away this split lot, we wanted to make all Bolton's Wood Way residential. It doesn't make sense for it to be partly industrial. So as you can see here, it's cleaned up. You know, the industrial zone is as it was, but it's just Bolton Woods Way is all residential now. Next. This is the 495-117 intersection. You have what's known as the Kane property here. In the back of the Kane, so you could see when it was first put in, it's just, you know, it wasn't really following any of the lot lines at all. There's a big residential on the back of their lot. So, you know, taking away all the split lots, this is what it looks, and this actually follows closely to what the mixed-use village overlay is now. There's some cleanup in the back here where there's some residential, there's business in a residential lot, so that's peeled back. You could see this section here. This is the new Sugar Road development. So that was business before. That's now going to be residential. Bolton Capital had some residential in the back, which is, you know, taking away the split there. Next slide. This is the corner of Forbish and 117. And again, it's just, as you could see, you know, it wasn't really following lot lines, so now it's on the actual lines. For the new Tadmore subdivision, we needed to carve out some open space for Fosbridge, so now that's residential too. So it went. So basically, you know, it went both ways. Some lots turned all residential, some lots turned all business, and it's really just to clean it up. It'll allow easier placement if a business was to develop, like that gas station lot, like I said, or the Kane property or any other things. You know, it just makes it easier if the actual business zone follows the actual lot line.
Point of order, yes.
I don't want to be lynched for asking this question, but I don't think we've moved the last few questions.
Excuse me?
I don't think anybody has moved or seconded the last few agenda items, nor this one.
Okay, you're probably right. So here's what we're going to do. Thank you, Mr. Bosley. We'll go right back and we'll do those 3 previous ones quickly by moving and seconding them. I apologize. That's my mistake. Excuse me? Work backwards? We're going to finish this article first, and then we'll fix the other ones. Thank you. Appreciate that. So we are still on Article 10. And are there any questions specifically? Move the article. Thank you. And is there a second? Is there a second?
We have a discussion?
Thank you. Now we have discussion. Kia?
Hi, Kia Oceanvine, Main Street. I can commend the planning board on trying to simplify zoning on many of these lots that have split zoning. Most of the changes will result in minor changes to the edges of the properties. Most make the majority status of that property apply to the entirety of that property, which is why you say cleaning up. Most affect small acreages that do not significantly impact their respective neighborhoods. But, there's a big but. Buried in this list is 579 Main Street, the big, beautiful house and barn occupied by Global Capital Delta Equity across from the senior housing. It is a iconic house, a beautiful house. I think we all agree we love it. It's the first house you see when you get off 495 and enter Bolton's Historic District. This property is not like the others in this list, not in any respect. Number one, this would represent a major change to this property. It would be going from over 77% residential to wholly limited business. That's opposite from almost all the others on the list. Number two, this property is not small. It is almost 20 acres. Currently, only 4.4 acres at the front are zoned for limited business. These two factors alone, and I could list about 8 more, mean that this property really deserves its own article. It should not be lumped in with these others. There has not been any public discussion about rezoning this important property. Even though there was a hearing, it did not address this property. I don't think this property was even mentioned in the February hearing. There's been no public discussion. It's an important property. I think the planning board is focused mostly on the Kane property and the gas station, and I can understand that. But there was almost no mention made of this, and the Historic Commission wasn't even notified about it until I told Martha Remington a few weeks ago. We are soon going to be working on a master plan, and this key property should be part of those discussions. The current owner has done a wonderful job renovating and maintaining this property. They have not asked for this zoning change. I do worry and consider the next owner, who might have great incentive to tear the beautiful house down to provide better access to the back 15 acres. Mostly, there is no urgency tonight to lump this property in with the others and vote on it. It would be far more suitable to have the master plan take it up. It would be more fair to have the town residents debate it, for the abutters to be aware of it, and for the historic folks to weigh in on what they can do to preserve the house. I therefore propose an amendment that Lot 4.C.27 be deleted from this list in this article.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the article to remove which parcel? .C.27, 579 Main Street, and the motion is to delete this parcel from Article 10 changes. Do we have debate on that amendment?
Mary Chumo, Corn Road. So I support this amendment to delete this parcel from Article 10. Sometimes when we clean things up, we get rid of things that later we regret getting rid of. And I think this is an example of that. Historically, 579 Main Street is significant. It was built around 1793 by Captain Samuel Blood, who served in the Revolutionary War. In the 18th and 19th centuries, it was one of the town's most prosperous farms. Today, it marks the entrance to the Bolton Center National Historic District, an area that has seen a rebirth of a spirit of community and sense of place in our town with the creation of the new town common. Factually, historic districts enhance property values. Kier mentioned the size of this property being almost 20 acres, of which 15 acres is residential and 4.4 is limited business. This property abuts 9 other parcels, 8 of which are residential, and only 1 is commercial, and that is the Freitas property next door to it. Rezoning this parcel is not going to lower your taxes. I'm okay with the cleaning up of the other parcels, especially to help this Kane property, which is already being advertised as a commercial property in anticipation of this article passing. But the planning board has not done an adequate job in thinking about 579 Main Street, and therefore I think it should be removed from Article 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Martha?
Martha Remington, Main Street, Chairman of the Historical Commission, but I'm speaking for myself this evening. On May 6th, 1991, a rezoning of the Dorothy Dewhurst sisters' property at 579 Main Street occurred. It was an extremely close vote, 91 to 45, I believe, or 41, fewer than 10 people. At that time, only the portion of the sun porch on the east of the property was limited business. And that zoning changed the entire house and barn to limited business. And I have regretted that I did not challenge that vote at the time for all of these years, coincidentally, May 6th. So I agree with Ms. Chumo and Ms. Oceanbine that this should be given a bit more thought. I do commend the planning board for their overall trying to clean these things up. And it seems to me, based on the maps, that the narrow frontage in this 19 acres would be wetlands between 579 and 601 Main Street. Thank you. I do want to address another portion of this. Should I come up again or do that now?
If you can be brief, do it now.
Yeah, I live on Main Street across from the gas station. I'm in a butter. And I have one question about the residential portion of that lot. It used to be 7.61 acres. Then a residential lot was cut out. It was like 5 acres and something, the way it is on this map. But I believe the residential portion, if this rezoning passes, the corner frontage, only 2.31 or so acres would be residential. And I want to know what happened to the other 3 or 4 acres. It seems to me that since that entire area is residential and it's now in a National Register district, we could have a little more of that ledge and hill zoned residential. It doesn't perk and it doesn't have well capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martha. I think we should stick to the amendment, though, in terms of this. We're going to vote on the amendment once the debate on the amendment finishes, and then if there's a different parcel, we can talk about that. So just on the one parcel that they have asked to remove. Eric?
Is this, okay, there we go. Just to note, I know that they were saying there's no public discussion, but it was definitely noticed, and we talked about it. Whatever, the Tommy wants to vote, that's fine. But, there shouldn't be scare tactics about losing that house. The reason we have a lot of process in place with public hearings, and somebody can't just come in and tear down that house. If anything was added, perhaps the owner wants to add, he has a growing business, maybe he wants to add an office in the back or something. But I wouldn't worry about that particular building. As you could see in Keys Farm, there was a very old house that had a ton of work to do, and planning board was able to work with them and save it. So there's a lot of interested parties in town, and there's public hearings. Somebody isn't just going to come in and steamroll but that's it.
Bob?
Yeah, Bob Romer, Main Street. I hear what Eric's saying. However, I have very little faith, if there is not a bylaw in place, that a subsequent planning board won't agree to that under a great deal of, among other things, tax pressure. So I agree with the previous speakers that this needs to be much more carefully reviewed. And although it was mentioned, apparently, in a public hearing, I think it deserves a very specific public hearing in a subsequent article. It is, in fact, the entrance to Bolton, of which we are very proud. So it's a little bit like, I love you, Bolton, now change. Let's be very careful.
David?
David Wiley, Green Road. I'm really shocked by this. A planning board is supposed to plan, and that means planning way ahead. And what I've just heard is, oh, we trust the present owners. That's not planning.
Okay, any other questions or debate on the amendment to remove 579 Main Street, parcels 4.C-27 from Article 10? If not, we'll vote on that. The amendment is a majority vote. So the vote is to remove it from the changes in this article. So it would stay as it is, I assume. All those in favor of the amendment to remove it, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Nay. The ayes have it by majority. Okay. Now, is there further debate on Article 10? Martha did ask a question. Eric, do you want to answer that one?
Are you talking about the corner of 85? Yeah, so I mean, that's still, if you want to go back a couple of slides. Yeah, right there. That's what you're talking about, Martha. It's still residential. That's not changed at all. So you can see there it's residential. So this little square right here is the gas station. And you can see the residential line going right down the middle of it. So that's the only thing that's changed. The residential there is still standing there. And actually you gained a little tiny bit more. Did I answer your question?
Excuse me. That present map says that that residential area is 5-point-something acres, but it is not. So even though the lines may look different, that is now what used to be 7.61 is now, I saw a map at the assessors the other day that said it was 2.31 acres. So either that map in the diagram is out of date, which could be because it takes a while for those to get updated.
Can we identify the parcel number, please?
4D71.
4C71?
4D.
Oh, 4D.
71. And the gas station is 4D28. And
That's the
so
gas
you can
station.
see in the former map, the line sort of slants to the left, and now it's more perpendicular with other little portions added.
Well, so there's the gas station, so the line now follows down it. And also, you know, there was a little bit, it looks different because more residential in this section was added.
A new lot of 1.5 acres was added some years ago for a residence, but they couldn't find water in the sewer area.
I mean, basically, we're tracking the lot lines. I don't know the exact number. I can't even read the numbers here, so.
And the gas
I think
station itself has increased from 0.92 to 2 acres here. So that's, I think the map might be out of date, but I just am worried about the residential portion. Dorothy Mayo gave that, or sold that part to the Canes. The other part of the Canes property came from Esther Whitcomb.
Thank you. Next.
Just to follow up on that also, makes a huge difference on that gas station, because I thought it was an acre or less, which makes it non-conforming, et cetera. Now, it's got 2 acres, it might be able to do more expansion, which we definitely don't want in a residential neighborhood. And that was the gist of my question, is this gonna make it easier for them to expand or to do more if we change it to business?
Yes, they want to redevelop that lot, and they currently can't with it being half residential, half business, so. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
definitely, they have requested to redo the gas station, basically.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak who has not spoken yet? Erica?
Hi, Erica Uriarty, Town Planner for Bolton. I just wanted to clarify Martha's question. So the labeling that you see on those maps, those are our online GIS mapping, and the labels just haven't been updated. But if you were to go back and look at the property cards for those properties, they would have the accurate acreages for each of those parcels. And then I'd also just like to add to that the planning board did approve an A&R plan back in 2015 for that existing gas station to increase the acreage from 2.7 to 3 acres. So that parcel is currently 3 acres, and if you went to the property card for that parcel, that's what you would see. So hopefully that provides clarification.
Thank you. Martha, I'm going to ask the person behind you to speak first. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hank Amabile from Main Street and 698 Main. So I have a question. First of all, I'm totally in favor of taking the amendment as it was previously. I think now we're just talking in general about this article, right? So my question for the planning board is, if these changes are made, and it's really primarily around the Kane property and the gas station, what's the difference in I'm assuming it under current zoning, you must have looked at, under today's parcels, you could develop X number of square feet. Once you go to the new lines, what's the square footage that's going to be allowed to be built, on those lots?
Erica, do you have those numbers offhand? I mean, also, to answer your question, last year we went from, as you know, as a town, we went from 8% coverage to 20%. So the numbers.
So that's basically what I was going to say, is that the lot coverage remains the same. It's 20% maximum. So what they could do today versus what they potentially could do after town meeting is the same. It's the same up to 20% lot coverage.
But I'm asking, if we're going ahead and saying, yep, let's do this, let's increase the size of these commercial zones, whatever the right name is, what's the square footage difference? It looks like it's double the amount of square footage of land, maybe.
For which particular parcel?
The Kane and that area, that's really the only one that has the major effect. So as it's currently zoned, there's a maximum square footage that could be built. Forget about wetlands and things like that. Let's just take it on a simple calculation.
So the question is, how many what's the change in size of the parcel?
Exactly.
Because it's the same
Or the
zoning.
development is really what I'm asking.
Right.
So I apologize, unfortunately, I don't have the exact number written down, but for total area for the Kane property, which includes the gas station but excludes that residential parcel, it's 24.26 acres according to the property cards. So if you take 20% of that would give you the total building coverage on all of those parcels.
So the new number is 24?
No, it's 20% of.
No, I'm sorry. I get the 20%.
Okay.
The 24 acres you said.
That's what they have for yes.
After this goes through, I'm just trying to get clear on this.
Sure. So, yes, 24 point. Yeah.
And how much is it now? How many acres are zone business today?
I apologize. I don't have the number calculated in front of me, but I certainly could do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to know what kind of impact we're talking about and particularly the Kane property, which it looks like it almost doubles in size in terms of, which to me would be double the size of the development.
It's essentially, so the increase, I have the percentage, it's about a 50% increase.
50% increase is the answer to your question.
Well, it's really not. My question was, what's the square footage? And percent is nice, but it's always nice to know it could be 40,000 instead of 20,000 square feet.
Right, so the total area that's being amended is 11.27 acres. I just don't have it converted to square footage in front of me.
Okay, that's just an example of something that would be great to know.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there further questions?
Hello? You could just take a, quick percentage, 20% of the 24 acres, and that's what could be developed. I will say for the Kane property, if we do want any business development along 495 and 117, that's really our prime spot to have any type of development. And so the easier we can make that to get developed, as you can see, it's a really tough property with all the ledge. People have looked at it. It's been on sale for many years now. So as a planning board, we're trying to get that area developed. That's why we're trying to do the multiple buildings, which was passed, and we're trying to give more flexibility, because up front there's a lot of ledge. If they want to put the buildings further in back where there is the landlocked residential, we're really just trying to give more options to get that developed. That's it.
Martha, do you have one more point?
Mr. Moderator, the gas station, which was a pre-existing non-conforming .92 acreage, is now 2.31 acres. And I was at that hearing where the planning board asked it to be an approval not required change. And I am just aghast that that pre-existing non-conforming area is suddenly well over twice its size. On my side of the street, the 8 acres is now residential. It always was residential, and it has a home. But if this is all limited business, it's going to be devastating to that westmost portion of the Pan District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Alice Romer from Main Street. A year or two ago, there was talk of a company wanting to come in and make a major truck stop gas station off of 495 at this spot. And I'm just wondering, if we change this, will this make it easier for somebody to put in a mega truck fueling station?
That was actually not this particular property. It was part of the Kane property. It would be between where the gas station was and 495. That's where the talk of that was. Any big gas station like that actually couldn't happen unless town meeting votes to increase the size of storage tanks. I think currently we're at 20,000 gallons, so we're not going to have a big truck stop like that unless town meeting also voted to change the tank size. But that was a different property. It wasn't this particular property.
Please,
No, it was
please, let's speak to the microphones when you're recognized. Thank you.
I mean, so the 27 acres that's for sale, the business that was interested in doing it, they wanted to develop the front 3 acres of that. It wasn't this gas station. There was question of what would happen with this gas station when there was another huge one there, but that's basically what happened with that.
David?
David Wiley, Green Road. I was prepared to vote in favor of this article as amended. Now I'm going to vote against it because I don't think that there's been adequate thought or planning or control. I certainly don't oppose all commercial development, but the town needs more master planning, more controls, more careful thought, and less leaving it up to the developer just to do what's profitable.
Thank you. Any further questions on Article 10? Okay, we've already amended it by eliminating one parcel. We're now back to the original main motion, which is to amend the town's base map and zoning map concerning these property changes. This does require a 2/3 vote. We'll try it by voice. In favor, and I would be saying you do want to make these changes that the planning board has proposed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That's pretty close. We can try once more. Don't scream louder, just let me hear it. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? I think we're going to have to count. If we could get our counters, please. Okay, so this is a hand vote. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise our pink ballots. We're going to start with the ayes. All those in favor of Article 10 and the proposed changes to the zoning map, raise your ballots and keep them up until we tell you to put them down. Thank you. All right, now everyone opposed to Article 10 as amended, who is voting nay, raise your ballot, please. Thank you. Okay, I cost us at least 10 minutes on this one. It's all my fault. It is. It's my meeting. Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Oh, that's where you get the totals. Okay.
Okay, the article fails. The vote is 72 in favor, 43 opposed. We do not achieve a 2/3 majority. All right, now, it was my mistake that we did not move the article in second. I believe it was Articles 7 through 9, the 3 planning board articles. 4. Boy, I'm sure I asked on the selectmen articles. But that being the case, we'll revote them. And I might just point out to everyone that all of these articles passed unanimously the first time. So we're going to start with... You can change your vote, I guess, but, so Article 4, spending limits on revolving fund accounts. What is the pleasure? Move and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm going to back up. Somebody stood up. Please do.
Wouldn't you have discussion first? Well, but the motion wasn't moved at first. So
Yes,
motion,
you can
and then a
speak.
second,
Yes.
and then I'm Mary McCarthy, Burnham Road.
Yes.
And so I'd like to make an amendment. I'm looking at all the work that the planning board
We're on Article 4. This is we're going back to revote some
Oh, okay.
articles that
All right.
unfortunately I did not follow the proper
Okay.
procedure.
All right. So I can't do that.
So this is Article 4
Okay.
only,
All
right now.
Okay.
And please put your hand up if you want to make a comment on any of these, because I'm assuming we're just going to quickly revote them. So all those in favor of Article 4, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's still unanimous. Article 5, establishment and spending limit of revolving trust fund for tax title collection. What is the pleasure? It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Still unanimous. Article 6, adopt 12th paragraph of MGL Chapter 41, Section 81U. Moved? Seconded? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Article 7, this was the first planning board article. Yes. I don't know the answer to that. I think we've already heard the presentation. Thanks for asking. So Article 7 was to amend the code, business, commercial, and industrial zones, subsection G, design review criteria. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Unanimous. Article 8, amendment to the Code of Bolton, zoning bylaw. This was the driveways. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous again. Thank you. Article 9, amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton to amend 1 building per lot for business. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous again. We're not going to vote 10 again. We did vote it. Sorry. So we are now on Article 11. Amendment to the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 3 zoning bylaw, Chapter 250 zoning, to add warehouse and self-storage facilities to the schedule of permitted uses, and to add definitions for light manufacturing, research and development laboratories, self-storage facilities, and warehouse. Let's, do we have to do the report before, or can we move the article? Move the article, thank you. Second. Okay, now let's have the report. Thank you.
All right. At a duly noticed planning board hearing held on February 13th, 2019, the planning board voted unanimously to support and recommend approval of Article 11 of the warrant to add warehouse and self-storage facilities to the schedule of permitted uses and add definitions for light manufacturing, research and development laboratories, self-storage facilities, and warehouse. So that's basically it. In the industrial zone, we had an inquiry about a self-storage facility at the Cobham building, which actually our table of uses doesn't currently specifically address, so we couldn't allow that to go forward. But we thought that in the industrial zone, a very low impact use of that zone would be either a warehouse or self-storage. So it would be, virtually, very limited traffic and low impact to the land. And then also we added definitions to determine, applications if they fit into light manufacturing, research and development labs. Self-storage and warehouse, we added those definitions. That's it. Thanks.
Is there any debate on Article 11? Al?
This isn't really debate, but there's something seems a little... Oh, Al Ferry, Pinewood Road. I thought Doug had already identified me. Yeah, so this isn't really an argument, not yet anyway, but on the research and development laboratories, what is this about wholly within an enclosed building? Does that mean something? I wonder, and part of this, which caused me then to wonder, is this list of a few things that you might do research in, is that supposed to be a list of what's allowed, or examples, or what's the purpose of the list? So kind of two questions. What's the purpose of wholly within an enclosed building? And what's the purpose of the list?
So, the purpose of the article, of the list under research and development? Yeah. So those are just...
Come with something else that wasn't on that list that wouldn't be allowed, or are these just supposed to be ideas?
I mean, we tried to make it as general as possible, and this is following other definitions. I believe we might have got it from Stowe, or it's standard language for what a research and development laboratory is. So it's pretty general of different types of labs.
So this is a list of what other towns have written?
I mean, yeah, it's the definition, Erica, we got this definition from Stowe, I think.
Erica?
We basically wanted to, because right now we do allow research and development labs, but there's no definition as to what a research and development lab is, so we tried to define it.
So the answer is this list is a definition of things that would be allowed if this bylaw change goes through.
Correct. We wanted to put some criteria to it, I guess. Whereas right now we just say research and development labs are allowed, but we didn't really. As a planning board, we wanted to have it more defined, so if somebody comes before us, we can point to the bylaws and say, well, you are or you are not a research and development lab. So we tried to define it.
Okay.
How about the wholly within an enclosed building part?
So that just means it needs to be, inside the building. You can't have like some outside manufacturing type product. It all needs to be within the building. You can't have anything outside the building.
But if they're designing something to go in a car, they can go out in their parking lot and attach it to one, I suppose.
I don't know.
It just seems a little bizarre, but probably okay.
Okay, I mean, I think the thinking when we wrote this is just that low impact to the community, you know, so just inside, not something going outside, you know, whether it's noise or pollution or, you know, that type of stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Next speaker. Thank you.
Don Cole, Don Cole, Main Street. I'm a little concerned of the ambiguity of the research and development lab. I'll give you a silly example, but what if somebody wants to do R&D on smallpox? You know, there's levels of danger, et cetera, to the community. This seems to be something we'd have to be coming back to.
I guess all I have to say is currently R&D labs are allowed. So, I mean, if you wanted to, you know, we were just trying to define what is allowed.
And I think that's great, but
Yeah.
I think you need to be a little more specific on things like that, when there could be a danger to the community. Thank you.
Hi, Gentry Farrell, Wattaquatic Hill Road. As someone who's tried to order chloroform, I can assure you that there are so many more checks for things like that that you really don't have to worry. Like, I know we don't like the whole, you know, just trust in the system type thing, but when it comes to things like diseases and smallpox and anthrax and things like that, like, there's so many systems in place that this is like, you know, I'm just saying there's a lot in place at the federal level that you don't have to worry about.
Are there any other questions on Article 11? Okay. This is also a zoning change, so 2/3 vote. We have moved and seconded the question. So, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Sounded unanimous. Okay, Article 12, amendment of the Code of the Town of Bolton, Part 1, Division 1, Part 2, General Legislation to add new Section 218 transfer station. Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. The sponsor is the Board of Selectmen, recommended by both the Board of Selectmen and Advisory. This is a majority vote. Are there any questions or debate on Article 12? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those
Randall
I'm sorry,
Porty,
I apologize.
Randall
Go
Porty,
right ahead.
Sugar Road. It just seems very broad. You know, it just says they can make rules. There's like no limitations to what can be done. Just sort of any guidelines for the lot rules.
Any comment from the selectmen?
The intent of this is to basically be able to find people who are doing egregious things and throwing away egregious stuff at the transfer station. Right now, there's no penalties for doing that. There's no legal basis for doing that. This simply establishes that the town will have the legal right to do that. There were specific rules at one point proposed as part of this motion, but then we realized that to increase a fine from $15 to $25 would require a vote of the town meeting and, you know, to something like that. And it just seemed that was just going into too much detail. And so it's a broad, it's been presented very broadly just to establish the right for the town to set regulations and have fines associated with them.
Thank you. Any other debate on Article 12. Seeing none, we'll vote. This is a simple majority. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Article 13, to amend the Code of the Town of Bolton, Division 1, Part 1, Administrative Legislation, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Article 3, Section 1.5, Non-Criminal Disposition. Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Sponsor is the Board of Selectmen, approved by both the Board of Selectmen Advisory, and it requires a majority vote. Is there any debate on this? Ken.
Ken Troop of Meadow Road. It's a question, I guess, and it goes to the previous speaker at the table about regulating what gets disposed of. The last line is salvaging or picking without authority. And I guess that, if you talk about broad, that is really broad. And I guess I wonder what that means. There's stuff that's standing without any signs by it between the cardboard container and the other large container. Is that available for the public or isn't it? And are you allowed to take stuff out? I mean, I think you're allowed to take stuff out of the large container. I don't know. So before you do fines on that, it seems to me you need to publish some information to the public about exactly what it is that you're allowed and not allowed to do. The dump has always been a great place to find things if people wanted to find them. If the intent is to not allow that to happen, where's it going? So just make sure you inform the public. Otherwise, I don't have any problem with what's there.
Here we go. Joe, is putting forth some guidelines something that we can do to make it clear what part of the transfer station is sort of a drop-off and exchange area as opposed to everything's enforced according to this last last regulation, rather?
Yeah, I think Joe Lynch, Public Works Director. I think the operable phrase there within that section is without authority. So I think clearly establishing an area of what's fair game and what's not fair game is something that can be established and posted as such. Our permit issued to us from the DEP specifically prohibits picking and salvaging. The thought is, in fact, back when there was a commodity market for these items, we wanted to make sure that as much of the aluminum was getting into the stream so we could reap the benefits of an aluminum income, plastics and paper, et cetera. Those markets have all softened. The only thing that's worth anything is nickels for bottles and cans at this point, and we certainly don't want to have that going into people going into those dumpsters. What we encourage on the contrary is any salvageable dollar deposit or a nickel deposit be donated to the Boy Scouts who have their own shed up there, and that's posted as such. But there are other things that people dispose of, household goods, maybe a piece of furniture or something, and we work with different programs where those can be adopted by somebody else for reuse. The original part of recycling is reusing it first, and we would continue to encourage that. And we could spell that out on the town's website, and we can put it out in our annual flyer of what types of activities we're discouraging or those that we are encouraging. I hope that answers the question.
Sharon Chapella from Warner Road. Whenever Adam comes home from the dump, I say, "Got anything good?" And oftentimes he has a treasure. And it's not clear to me from this on whose authority, and are we going to get swacked with a $100 fine because he picked up just that nice piece of wire that was sticking out of the dumpster, that it was just what we need. It's unclear. It seems to me that I bet a whole lot of people in this room have done the same thing, including maybe people sitting up in front. And so, clarifying on whose authority. I understand what was being said about people doing this as a business, but I'm talking about us cheapsteaks in town.
I was here back when the transfer station was just a big hole in the ground, right? and there was several tables, and, you know, you took your pick. This is not targeted toward the weekend town, is there something I'm actually going to use in here? This is targeted toward people who are coming in and, you know, this is a sideline that they have, is going through and pulling out all the bottles, taking all the copper, stuff like that. It's not targeted toward somebody's early teenage son or daughter who reaches into and, you know, grabs a cool something. So, you know, we're not going to be policing this. We won't have armed guards around all the dumpsters. We're not looking to go anywhere near that. What this does is give the town legal standing that when somebody does something egregious and grievous, we can say they broke one of the regulations.
It's a little hard because it is written so broadly that that if we have a cranky person working down there who says he took something without authority, I mean, I understand the distinction you want to make. I don't believe the distinction is written here clearly, or is at least it's a little bit too open to somebody in a bad mood making trouble for a neighbor.
I think the temperament, and I will speak for the other selectmen, I think the temperament of the selectmen on implementing this is that we will err on the side of leniency until someone shows us that that's the wrong thing to do.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other further debate on this article? Seeing none, we'll vote. This is a simple majority. Article 13. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 14, local option rooms tax. Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, approved by the Board of Selectmen Advisory, and a simple majority vote. Is there any debate on this article? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 15, recode of roof on public safety building, $32,000. Thank you. It's moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Sponsored by the Department of Public Works, approved by the Board of Selectmen Advisory and Capital Planning. This is a simple majority. Is there any debate on this? Mark. Next one? Okay, we'll change the advisory vote on the next one. All right, Mark?
Mark Shunter, Fox Run Road. I have a question here. The way the article reads, the roof over the apparatus floor is the original roof. The building was built in 1967. Somewhere in the mid-'80s, it was sprayed over with a closed-cell foam roof, which has performed admirably. Subsequent to that, and I'm not sure when those dates were, it was recoated again. There are no issues with that roof, and I was rather surprised to read this in one of the local papers that we were spending $32,000 to fix a roof or to recoat a roof that has no issues. And I'm not terribly on board just the fact that it's 20 years old. Town hall roof is probably 100 years old. We're not redoing that every 50 years. It's $32,000. It's 4,200 square feet of roof. It's about a little less than $8 a square foot to do it. I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around, you know, there's no signs of it. It hasn't been evaluated. I personally went up there and took a look at it. Thermally, there's two reasons to replace a roof. It's leaking or its thermal performance is less than adequate. Neither of those things are present in this. And I'm just thinking $32,000 is a large sum of money that could be better spent elsewhere. And I would urge this meeting to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on Article 15?
Joe Lynch, Department of Public Works. I don't think there was a question in there so much as a statement, but I want to assure town meeting and those who are about to vote on this. It has been evaluated. The roof that was an original roof, which was a gypsum built up over it, was foam sprayed and recoated dozens of years ago. Was recoated 18 years ago. It carries a 10-year warranty. It is 8 years beyond warranty. The silicone membrane over the foam is failed and cracked in many locations, and the foam is absorbing water. Should the roof continue to deteriorate and the water penetrate and migrate further, you're looking at a $150,000 replacement. So this is in fact a recoat of what is already there. It's a sacrificial service that'll get you another 10 years before you're faced with a $100,000 problem.
Thank you. Any further debate? All right. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Article 16, replacement of DPW Director's 2005 Crown Victoria with a 3/4 ton, which is a change. It did say 1 ton in the warrant, but it's actually a 3/4 ton pickup truck with plow equipment, $46,900. And also there has been, the advisory recommendation is printed incorrectly. I believe it should be 5-1, is that correct? Okay. So it should be 5-1 for advisory, 3 for selectmen, majority vote. What is your pleasure, Stan? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any, come on down.
Kathy Jonta, Fox Run Road. I just have a question. I'm not aware that our DPW director actually plows, and maybe he always has, and I just wasn't aware. But is the DPW director a working director, and is that why the plow will be on this? I'm just confused. So clarification?
To clarify, can you hear me?
I can't hear you now. I would also like to say that something needs to be done with acoustics here. I should actually be able to hear the whole meeting.
Hello, there we are, okay.
Thank you.
Up to this point, the DPW director has not plowed, and the intent is not for him to go out and plow routes, but as part of efficiency, we thought if the DPW director could, had a vehicle where he could push back intersections, then we could get intersections pushed back more quickly. So it's not to go out and plow around the town, it's to push back intersections to improve sight lines faster.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon Chappello, Warner Road. I appreciate the fact that we're proposing to get rid of one gas guzzler, but to get another one. And as a green community, I know that we have an obligation to have town vehicles be as energy efficient as possible. I understand that if it is a plow vehicle, that isn't the case. But if it is the DPW's own, if it is Mr. Lynch's prime vehicle, his work vehicle that he takes and goes back and forth to home and drives around town in, would it not, do you know whether or not, Don, that it should actually be considered within those fuel-efficient car regulations?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not need to be considered under the green communities, and it's not a vehicle that is being taken back and forth to home. It's only for around town and to do work around town.
Oh, just work there. Has there any consideration in trying to get a more fuel-efficient truck to do that? I mean, is it necessary to have a 3/4 ton truck for that?
You can't put a plow on a small pickup truck or a Prius, so it needs to be a vehicle of a certain caliber in order to put a plow on it.
So Right, so is the plow really, I thought the plow was like an additional goodie to put onto it since you were getting a 3/4 ton truck, not that you were getting a 3/4 ton truck because you needed a plow.
The theory behind this is that where this is going to be a workhorse is when Mr. Lynch is out on snowy nights checking up on the conditions of the road. That when the plows make their turns, they make wide turns, in the course of his own surveying the work that's going on at, between midnight and 6 a.m., if he sees a corner that needs to be tightened up, he can do it without having to call somebody off of a route and have them do it. That's the reasoning that we're following for giving him a utility vehicle that's got a plow attached. So it's not all of a sudden he's going to have his own route, but he's going to go cleaning up and tightening up corners and turns and other things as he sees need to be done without disturbing the other drivers on their assigned routes.
I understand.
You want to take a chance here, too?
Connie?
I was dissenting vote on this article because I felt the same as you did. I felt like if you were the manager of a department, you would be managing the department and not out plowing at any point in time. Our policy used to be, up until this article, that we would rotate a squad car, a police cruiser, except they've been in quite a demand. The next cruiser is going to the EMT here, and I think it would be a year. You would have to wait for another cruiser, and I think that's the gap year. But I felt that the Crown Vic needs some repairs. It's rated for 250,000 miles. It might get us, with a few repairs, till that next police cruiser that for I don't know how many years the department used the cruisers. So this would be new, and I'm afraid once we put this into place, every 8 to 10 years we'll be buying another one. I would assume the repairs will be quite sufficient in, well, you will have repairs and they cost money. So I was against it because I felt he could be at a command post and we pay people to plow. Our overtime is incredible. So now you know that is this reason why I voted against this.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify for... All right. I'd just like to clarify for town meeting that the Crown Vic is beyond repair, so that's not an option. And we estimated that we could save about $5,000 a year in plowing by having the DPW director do pushback of intersections. So over 8 years, that's $40,000 right there, and we make the roads safer more quickly.
Okay, we have another gentleman here.
Mike Keller from Pondside Drive. A couple things with this. Yeah, let's get rid of the Crown Vic. And if you get any money for it, let's put it back in the budget, okay? But I've been in management a lot. And I think Joe reflects what I do. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. If my guys are in trouble, I'm out there helping them instead of sitting behind a desk and waiting for somebody to call me. And plus with their calls, they all have walkies, if I'm not mistaken, of some sort, to get in touch with you.
Cell phones, we have two-way radio.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, if somebody sees something out there, they can call him if he's en route or if he's out there. This is a great idea. And I'm asking Joe, is this a big enough truck for you? Or you want something bigger? I mean, my understanding is that you've got your own ride back and forth to work. This is while you're in town, where you don't use your own vehicle while you're doing the town's business, which is great. But if you're going to start moving snow with it, is this going to be big enough for you to be out there doing what you need to do with some of the intersections and some of the heavy snow, not the light snow, but a lot of the heavy snow that's encumbered with salt and sand?
Yes? You can answer that?
Just so others can hear it. So the original request was in fact for a 1-ton. after a lot of debate, it was downsized to the 3/4 ton because really the winter use is a small element of the total use throughout the entire year. You would not be plowing a municipal roadway route, a full route, with anything less than a 1-ton truck. So that is how the operational decision was made, that what I do now is canvas. Every storm, I am running every inch of every road several times during the storm. And when I find a deficiency in a route, I need to go through a process where the person who's assigned to that route either gets called out to deal with something that's urgent, or we need to track it and it has to get done later on. Or, through all of that, I could simply drop the plow, clean it up, and at the end of the storm, make a more, not even the same storm, the next morning, we can go out and make a more permanent repair. So I think under those rules, 3/4 ton is adequate. 1 ton would be preferable. It also has a trade down capability that when it completed its use as an administrative vehicle, it could actually trade down into an operational vehicle. 3/4 ton would be limited in that regard.
Thank you. Please come to the microphone if you want to talk. I'm sorry, you don't need to come to the microphone. You can yell out what you want to say. Thank you. Any other debate on Article 16? This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That passes by majority. Article 17, replacement of DPW SUV with a half-ton van. The article has been moved and seconded, sponsored by the Department of Public Works. There's one further clarification on this article. In the summary, it says replacement of DPW. It should be 2008 Ford Expedition. It did say 2005 in the warrant that was mailed. Board of Selectmen Advisory and Capital all approved. This is a majority vote. Is there any discussion on this article? You don't need to do that. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is a unanimous vote. Thank you. Okay. Article 18, drainage flood control improvements, South Bolton and Spectacle Hill Roads, $250,000. Moved and seconded, thank you. Sponsored by the Department of Public Works, approved by Selectmen Advisory and Capital Planning, and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on this article? Martha.
Mr. Moderator, Martha Remington, Main Street. Why isn't the developer of Century Mills Estates footing some or all of this bill? Thank you.
Is there anyone who wants to address that?
The drainage situation there, we have a drainage situation there even without Century Mill Estates. There's some water coming down from a retention basin, well, more than a basin, a retention area that exacerbates the situation. But we would have a drainage situation without Century Mill Estates, and we've designed it to deal with 21st century size storms, and we're working with the developer at Century Mill Estates to deal with his problem. But we would need to do this work even if Century Mill Estates wasn't there.
Mr. Fournier.
Phil Fournier, 31 Spectacle Hill Road. Our property abuts where this proposal is going to be, and I've been there for 30 years, and I beg to differ with that assessment of what's happened since Century Mill has come in to being. That said, I haven't seen any plans about what this will look like. Is there any proposal? This is going to be in our front yard, and we'd rather not have big retention basins in our front yard. So I don't know, as an abutter, if there's any notification of what these plans will look like.
We do have plans. They're certainly available to be seen at the DPW office. We don't have them here tonight,
Okay.
but they certainly are available. We've done flagging in the area. We've done a lot of work in the area. And as I said, I'm not diminishing the fact that Century Mill Estates is an issue. I actually said it exacerbates the area, so we're trying to deal with it on a parallel track.
Any other debate on this article? Okay, just to clarify, this is a 2/3 vote because it is an appropriation of. All right. So, not seeing any further debate, we'll vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes by 2/3. Article 19, engineering to replace failed culvert, Wattaquatta Hill Road, $80,000. Moved and seconded, thank you. Department of Public Works sponsor. Approved by the Board of Selectmen Advisory and Capital Planning. This is a majority vote. Is there any debate or discussion on this article?
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Yes?
Is this in addition to the $890,000 that was just awarded for some work on Wattaquatta?
I believe what you may be referring to is the $975,000 MassWorks grant for the intersection of Wattaquatta and Main Street, and yes, it is in addition to that.
Okay, let's vote. This is a majority. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Article 20, emergency protective measure related to failed culvert, Wattaquatta Hill Road, $20,000. Moved and seconded, thank you. Department of Public Works is the sponsor. Board of Selectmen Advisory and Capital Planning all recommended it, and this is a majority vote. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. Article 21, command vehicle Chevrolet Silverado 2500 pickup truck, command utility vehicle, $50,000. Article has been moved and seconded, and I believe that this is a change at $50,000 from the warrant that was mailed at $55,000. That's a reduction, that's all right. Not a substantial change. The sponsor is the fire department, and it was recommended by all three boards and requires a majority vote. Any discussion on Article 21? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 22, Emerson School Building Carpet Replacement, $30,000. Pleasure? It's been moved and seconded, thank you. Sponsor is Neshoba Regional School District. Approved by the Board of Selectmen and Advisory and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on the carpet replacement? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 23, temperature control system replacement, Florence Sawyer School, $98,160. Article has been moved and seconded. This is sponsored by Neshoba Regional School District, recommended and approved by the Board of Selectmen and Advisory, and requires a majority vote. Any discussion on the temperature control system? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 24, replenish the Advisory Committee Reserve Fund, $25,000. Moved and seconded, thank you. Sponsor is advisory. Approved by Board of Selectmen and advisory and requires a majority vote. Any discussion on the replenishment of the reserve fund? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 25, Neshoba Regional School District Debt Authorization, $600,000. The article has been moved and seconded. The sponsor is Neshoba Regional School District, approved by both the Board of Selectmen and advisory, and this requires a majority vote. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 25, please say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 26, establish stabilization fund for Neshoba Regional School District. Article has been moved and seconded. Sponsor is Neshoba Regional School District. The recommendation for the Board of Selectmen will be given on the floor, and the advisory voted 4-2. So, Board of Selectmen, please.
Yes, the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to support this article.
Is there any other discussion on Article 26? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Passes by a majority. Article 27 is to authorize the town election. Article has been moved and seconded, and I might add, next Monday is Election Day. Please do come and vote. Right here, same place, much easier. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Before I accept a resolution to dissolve, I want to apologize for the mistake I made earlier, and I appreciate people picking that up, and I'm glad we got it all squared away. Excellent town meeting. I hope the Bruins already won. We'll see. Do I have a motion to dissolve the meeting? Second? All those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? None. Thank you.